Hey Greg, this is Write Once, Read Many, and yes, the live stream is accidentally being sent to another channel for a moment, but now we get to live in the world of 24.2. Alright. And as a reminder, the audience participation question was, what were your initial thoughts on Alexandria showing up again in this fight? I didn't have much for themes. I'm sure there are some themes, but the sort of implacability as a theme, not only Behemoth, but also when they you know, go underground there. Having issues, say, against an opponent who seems implacable. I guess I'm just gonna call her Contessa. I'm not gonna be like the mysterious woman or anything like that. So when fighting Contessa, she's basically unbeatable for the likes of Taylor and these foolish wards. So yes, implacability. That's the only theme I got going on. I'm gonna let this speed draw its way out before I get into the chapter, but I do quite like the scene that was picked. We get to see the Tinker bikes going, and yeah, I mean, they're pretty cool. I want to steal a bunch of Tinker bikes and perhaps have them... I mean, these are meant to be like stealthy and not look like they're Tinker bikes or whatever, but I want ones that are like the Tron bikes. I want to ride on a Tinker Tron bike. Alright. The speed draw's almost over. Boop. Okay, and now we're switched over to the final image. Looking good. Anyway, so we start the chapter off and immediately begin addressing Alexandria being back. At first, Taylor's like, it's definitely Alexandria. She just keeps fighting and she's able to go toe-to-toe with Behemoth. But, you know, we'll see later that there's perhaps more to it than that. Behemoth keeps redirecting all the energy from the punches either like into the ground or into the air. So they kind of start staggering attacks again. They have, you know, Legend, Eidolon, all the dragon suits, all the medium tier ranged capes and stuff firing, and they keep fighting and trying to distract for Alexandria. They're, you know, Eidolon, Legend, and Alexandria are more or less unbeatable by Behemoth, but everybody else is staying back and just using ranged fire. It's buying time in a really useful way. It goes into, like, decent detail as to what's happening for, like, the actual blow-to-blow. But suffice to say, after some knocking about, they finally knock Behemoth over, and Taylor's thinking about how this is just like the lightning rod, how they had sort of... it's more about just buying time for the other people and giving them a slight reprieve in the fight than it is about dealing direct damage or anything. This is where we get the, like, was she being more cautious than she needed to be? I saw her pass up on a handful of opportunities I might have taken in her shoes. When his back was turned, his attention sufficiently occupied. Was she aware of something I wasn't? Was she a convincing fake? Or is she just a little more afraid after what my bugs had done to her. Well, it's a mix of 2 and 3, I think, Taylor. Not 1 or 4. Or I guess if the questions are, was she aware of something I wasn't, and was she a convincing fake? Those are the 2. Behemoth has actually been trying to reach the lightning rod this entire time, which means that it actually distracted him pretty well. Because he started firing at it like mid last chapter or whatever while they were trying to find the Undersiders, and he's still like semi-focused on it because he was going for it and they've just held him up so long. But he finally gets there, and just shoves it to the ground like it's nothing. Take that. They have, as I said in the last chapter, all these dogs rigged up with harnesses and sleds and stuff, and they're carrying a bunch of wounded people away from the general battle. Nobody else is like high enough up to see the fight. They're all behind the cityscape. So when Taylor sort of reaches the teammates down on the ground, Tecton's like, "What the hell was that?" And then when Taylor's telling them it was Alexandria, then her, Regent is immediately giving her shit. "You murdered Alexandria, remember? You're a horrible person doing things like that." And then Regent and Imp are going like wild these chapters. Imp goes, "Leave her alone! She feels so bad she's seeing things!" And then Gru marshals them a little bit, but then Greg says, "Somehow Alexandria returned." Exactly. Real Palpatine of this setting. But let's see here. Where was I? Oh yeah. So they it's funny because the thing she says is, they go, "It's Alexandria? You're sure?" And then she goes, "Can you ever be sure of anything? Clones, alternate realities, healing abilities." It actually reminds me a lot of what Poe says, where he's like, cloning, dark science, like whatever the hell the line is. Oh boy. But unlike the cloning Palpatine, and Snoke was just a Palpatine with a pickle face, unlike all of that, this actually has a good explanation. And then let's see here. Apparently Behemoth has melted down part of the lightning rod they had made and thrown it as a big projectile. And then it didn't really get anybody or anything, but he was lighting it up with his... I feel like we haven't touched on it very closely. He has what they call the kill range, which is there's about 32 feet around him where he can bypass the Manton limit and just burn anything from its core out. So until something relieves its kill range, he can just like directly infuse it with energy, seemingly, and he does that to the lightning rod as he chucks it to people, and it is molten slag more or less. But it says lasers from capes in the distance slice the second sphere into shreds. I have to imagine that's the Yangban. So they get moving. They're riding through the darkness, so the participants can't see what's going on, and Taylor's sort of leading them as far as avoiding fires, etc. And she's flying about to a certain degree with her little pack. And let's see here. The behemoth starts sending out radiation, so that's also why they just like use Gru's darkness everywhere. Whenever he feels trapped by a situation for too long, then Behemoth will switch up tactics, of course. But one that we had not seen up to now is this one. The Behemoth was glowing. His gray skin tending more towards white. A stark contrast to his obsidian horns and claws. The heroes were backing off a measure. Behemoth was taking advantage of the situation to stampede forward, tearing past buildings and barricades. But yeah, he can just sort of blast the shit out of them with radiation, and it's like, what doesn't this asshole do? And then, so she redirects from a fire. They change directions, but they have to change super fast. Gru nearly falls off the sled, and she catches him back into the sled. Then she hops over to another part of it and gets one of the civilians back inside. Behemoth sends a shockwave at them when he claps his hands together, etc. There's like lots and lots of blow-by-blow that I'm not going to exactly go through. I do like that it says, all around me, the smoke was dashed out of the sky by the impact's reach. With the front of my body hugging the building, I could feel not only the shockwave, but the vibrations that followed as buildings fell and debris settled in new locations. Yeah, like these chapters of this arc are like very evocative of the situation. And so they're always keeping that in mind. Like the grandeur of the scale, like the destruction, the like the shit they're dealing with. But yes. He's given up the irradiating for the clapping destruction, and then boop 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 boop. They reach a group of people. A crowd is in front of them, and they stop. And then the sort of group of people move up to them. It seems to be all types of people, businessmen, homeless people, some of them had guns, etc. And they demand to know what's happening with these injured people. Like, are they stealing people? Then so the person sort of leading the crowd, who's younger than Taylor expects, I wonder, in this setting, what it means for a leader to be younger than you'd expect normally. They're a cape. They got powers. So this person says that they're going to take the injured, and they're sending all of the undersiders in the wards back out to fight. They say it's their duty to fight Behemoth. And then Taylor's very concerned about this situation. So what she does is that she sends the undersiders back up and sends them to the ambassadors, essentially. She's directing them, but she's going to go with the Chicago wards and these injured civilians to wherever they're going. And this is when we get a cut-in from the armband, because, Taylor had asked last chapter, at the end of the chapter, like, what was going on with Alexandria. It was all very dramatic. And then Defiant confirms, Alexandria confirmed, gone from PRT custody. And he also tells her to stay out of Alexandria's way until they can figure out more. So she messages back in acknowledgement, a thank you even, a shock from Taylor. And then Grace comforts her that it's a good thing that Alexandria is here. And I think Grace is right, because, like, they need the distraction to Behemoth. It's like they said in the chapter when Alexandria was killed, like, it will be a noticeable difference in the fights. Their side lost a bunch of firepower. Having a true flying brick who can't be killed by Behemoth in any, like, reasonable fashion, it's pretty effective. Let's see here. You know, Taylor's still worried. Tecton's basically telling her it's fine. So they get to some building and they start going underground. And the underground corridor just goes, like, deeper and deeper. Taylor notices that the guy who was the leader of the group seems to have, like, weird cat eyes. And then she's like, oh, he's got powers. Oh, these are cold capes. Oh, no. In the very short time while they're getting to this, like, pathway to the underground, then Gru has already made the rendezvous between his, like, team portion and then the Parian Foil contingent. So all 8 of the Undersiders and the ambassadors who are still up are in the same location, which is good. And then let's see here. Every time they get messages, they're, like, garbled, and some of the messages don't seem to go through all the way. But it's like the ambient electromagnetic radiation in the air is stopping a lot of communications, and it's only because they have, like, hardened devices that the armbands work at all. They start descending deeper and deeper under the surface, and Taylor, it's going to get so deep that Taylor can no longer reach the surface, which you've got to think, like, multiple city blocks upwards, and she can't reach the surface. Like, yeah. But Tecton says, this tunnel was made by a cape. And Taylor thinks, don't bring it up. And then the guy, the leader guy, just says, no. And he doesn't acknowledge them by turning to them. And then when Tecton starts trying to say something, he's like, I'm pretty sure. And then Taylor kind of shoves him. And then Wanton, you know, not picking up necessarily. Or maybe he is, and he's lightening the mood. He goes, oh, so pretty, when the I'm pretty sure was cut off. But, you know, they keep it cool. Taylor realizes that along with her and Tecton, the only one who realizes that there's something wrong is Golem. He seems to notice, like, oh wait, no, never mind. I'm wrong a little bit. The others sort of passively start noticing Cuff, Annex, and Grace gravitating toward the others, but it's specifically Golem is, like, seems to be actively aware and wary of the situation they're in, rather than the others who are sort of instinctively aware to some degree and concerned. So Taylor thinks, how did he pick that up? He was supposed to be a rookie. But then, you know, saves that for later. They finally get to this big open underground place. Apparently it's very crowded, dim, and then tight corridors, and there's tiny little rooms that people are living in carved out of rock. She says, at least there was room to stand up straight in the jail. These rooms were stacked one on top of the other, too high. Or on top of one another, too high. Tecton's power can't go off because he can't get a good view of, like, the actual walls and stuff, so he can't, like, tell if it's stable. But he thinks probably. And then Taylor says, I don't know if I can leave people here if it's a death trap. Wanton points out that the battlefield is pretty risky. Taylor thinks but does not say, up there's a chance. But the leader of the Cold Capes here tells them to leave and go fight. And then she sort of... So it says, Defiant had said we needed their assistance. And then, in line with Defiant's, thought process, she says, we need your help. You and any of the others with powers. I think Taylor's pretty consistently aligned with Defiant for the entire story after Arc 22 ends. Which is, interesting since they were one of the most contentious relationships at the beginning. But they really do think very similarly. And yeah, she thinks that this gamble's worth it. And then the guy directly refuses. He says it's not their duty. It's Taylor's. Taylor says, their group's duty. It's everyone's duty. And then basically the guy says that it's the duty of the costumed people to fight Behemoth, and it's the duty of them to wait in the shadows and fight their enemies. And we're gonna see this from both sides. It's actually unclear overall in the Cold Capes thing which factions have done what, etc. So we're just sort of taking it at their word at any given moment, or with a grain of salt. But both sides are convinced that the other side is incredibly dangerous, and neither side shows themselves to be particularly more good or bad than the other when we see them here. But the quote here is, no, we show ourselves and all ends badly. We fight subtle war. Better to lose today and fight subtle war tomorrow. You see me, I am done, finished. You see all of us, they are done. No. But yeah, it says her idea is maybe India had its own share of capes on the same scale as the Slaughterhouse 9. Cleverer capes who worked in the background. And we never get a full elaboration on this, but I do feel like there's a degree of a large scale, it seems as though there's a large scale covert war going on between two factions. It might be more complex than that, but at the very bare minimum, that seems to be what's going on. But yeah, he keeps ushering them out, saying they need to leave. And then Taylor says that they need vehicles if they're about to leave, but she sort of ends her sentence midway because she senses that a portal is opening, a door. And she sensed this kind of thing before, at the time that Pretender was stolen in Las Vegas. It's the people from Cauldron. They're opening doors. And Contessa is here. The way they say it is, my attention caught by this visitor. She was close. All the details matched the person I'd sensed inside the cult Shadra. The clothes, the hair, the dimensions, even the way she moved. Purposeful, unhurried. So yeah, they all get tense, both the locals and her team, and she sort of gives more of a description. She thinks maybe that Contessa is about her dad's age, maybe French or Italian, but she can't even tell. I don't know why. I definitely think of her as Carmen Sandiego-esque. It says she wore only a simple black suit. that had been tailored to fit her body with the narrow black tie and white dress shirt. And yet my brain is like, definitely Carmen Sandiego, but in black. So there's clearly a disconnect here. I think when I'm thinking of characters, they're in like more representational forms than exact forms. I don't know. But yes. Contessa says something compelling to the leader of the Indian Capes, the one that Taylor has begun to call Cat's Eyes in her mind. And then Taylor tries to confront Contessa, but it doesn't really work. She says something more, and then Tecton is worried about fighting someone, even if she is, as Taylor says, a hitman. This stuff is starting to concern the less experienced team members. So Taylor balks at the idea that they need to wait to start a fight because of the truce, because if you let your enemies make the first move, you're going to die. Tecton says, like, look, it's still on me if we break the truce because of how things have been laid out. Taylor asks if he's vetoing the order. Tecton says no, and he still leaves her in command. But this sort of cows her in a way. Not in a bad way. This tempers her. And she's able to, like, wait. And maybe this hesitation was part of what Contessa needed. But it's, like, it's not really Tecton's fault. Whatever the situation was, Contessa was gonna break on through to the other side. Taylor asks who she is. She says, "Go, Weaver, take your team. We have no business with you anymore." And then looking into the eyes of Contessa, she can tell she's a thinker. She says it's like being the opposite of Alexandria or Faultline. And then Contessa says like one more sentence to the guy leading the local people, and then doorways start opening up, and they start going through. Taylor's yelling, "No! You can't trust them!" Because of like, or you can't trust her because of like what the Eidolon clone had said about kidnapping and experimenting on people. I will say, like, out of story knowledge, I think that these people are likely more safe than the vast majority of people on Earthbet after this happens. I think that they got saved by just going to some random ass world. Good job, Cat's Eye. You led your people out of the darkness and into the not getting owned by an Endbringer. But yeah, Taylor's like demanding answers from Contessa. What the hell is Cauldron doing? Do you want to start a war? And then Contessa says, "No war, but we need soldiers." Taylor tries at this point to attack Contessa, but it doesn't work. We get a long series of really close quarters failed attempts at things. Contessa has one stiletto knife and one handkerchief. It says a stiletto knife no longer than my finger. So I'm guessing Taylor and my hands are not that different in size. Pretty small. That's a small knife. And, yeah, she's just like, she's swooshing around. She stabs a fire extinguisher so that it spews on, like, a bunch of the bugs. She's, like, spinning and moving. She's pushing people into other people like it's nobody's business. Tecton's trying to do a thing. Grace is trying to do a thing. Cuff's trying to do a thing, but they've got like Annex and Wanton there as well, and it doesn't matter. It's just like they can all try and close in on her at once, and they can't really make a difference. Taylor's using the flight suit at like minimum distance. She's like thinking of how Victor or Uber would handle this situation. She thinks there'd be like a judo throw at one point, so she like stops short and then moves out of the way to try and like have Tecton come in right from behind and get a blow, but that doesn't work. She like moves in and seemingly uses Tecton's power armor as a bit of a platform to like roll push off of. And then Taylor, who put her mask back on off screen, has her mask pulled up, and Contessa's gonna stabby in the neck zone. So they all freeze and they stop because she's got Weaver. It says her line here is very to the point. Wards, back off. Grace, cuff. I want you out of sight, or Weaver bleeds. And then Taylor nods for this, and then they back around the corners. This is so funny. No tricks, you have 2 seconds, but because of how her power works, she knows that they're going to try tricks and stuff. But like leads them into the same exact thing. I don't know. It's funny how every little thing she does is directed toward these causes, but some of them seem so like pointless almost, but she probably said that to make the situation seem more normal, as though it were a situation where someone would say that. But yeah, Wanton is like shocked, and then like asking how she's winning. Basically, Taylor says she's a precog, and then Taylor tries to poke her like insect arms from her flight pack tries to stab the eyes of Contessa, but of course Contessa is able to just keep kind of messing with them, moving them about very easily. Taylor tries to get them to all jump in at once. All of the wards are advancing again. They try a big team attack, and boy, do they get all messed up. She knocks Taylor into the ground, sets off her flight pack. It sends her through Wanton, getting probably the shit kicked out of her there, and then knocks Tecton. Tecton's hits the wrong spot on the floor or whatever, and then instead of knocking out the footing from Contessa, it instead breaks the golem arm, and Annex had already been below Contessa as well, but Taylor had been like knocked into his face while he was like trying to get upward toward Contessa. It was a whole thing. They all got owned at once. And then Taylor calls for the wards to stand down because she's concerned that she might murder all of them if it keeps going. She keeps asking Contessa questions, though, even though Contessa initially doesn't respond to that. She says, "What's your power?" And then fucking Contessa, this is the greatest. Contessa goes, "I win." I gathered as much, I said. What I mean is that I can see the paths to victory. I can carry them out without fail. I felt my heart skip a beat at that. She'd volunteered an actual answer. The fuck? Grace asked. She's lying, Wanton said. That's ridiculous. It's not even close to fair. And then, obviously Taylor thinks to herself about how powers aren't fair. Contessa says, it doesn't matter. What matters is that there are other enemies you should be fighting. Taylor tries to get more info. Enemies plural? And then Contessa says there are a bunch of people who are going to be making power plays today, now. Taylor fails to get any info. She tries to ask a question about Alexandria, but isn't super precise. So when she gets a yes, it doesn't get much info. And then asks if it's Cauldron's plan or someone else's plan and gets a yes again. It's like, she's gonna give you the least info she can. She basically says that she's telling them that she's saying this to their group because they can't negatively impact her plans. But when they ask if the people who were just sort of disappeared through the portals are gone for good, then she says, I don't expect anyone on this earth will see them again, barring an exceptional success on our end. Yeah. And then when questioned why she can't just use her power to defeat Behemoth, then she says that, she says, my power is a form of precognition. Unlike most such powers, other precognitive abilities do not confuse it. That said, there are certain individuals it does not work against, the Endbringers included. Which Taylor speculates as it goes on that the actual reason is because there's no way to kill the Endbringers, that there is no path to victory. But I do like the ones she says that they have a built-in immunity, something their origins granted them. Interesting. Their origins. But yeah. It's cool that, like, Golem, Wanton, and Grace are all, like, confident enough to... I guess it's less of a thing for Grace, because she's a pretty confident person. But that Golem and Wanton are like, ready to speak up in the situation against this incredibly intimidating cape. I don't think Cuff or Annex say anything really important in this conversation, though. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, Contessa leaves through a doorway, leaving them with almost no answers. They sort of shout out a final question to her, but nothing happens. And then Taylor gets back to focusing on what's what. She leads them to a group of vehicles that she senses with her bugs. So they, it's a page break here, but they run to the end of the path where she indicates the vehicles are so that they can zoom outward. Apparently they've been gone from the surface for like a half hour, which is, not ideal in a battle that things happen this fast. It says whole tracts of New Delhi had been leveled. But, yeah, huge portions of buildings are down. They say that the air smells like ozone and smoke and stuff, and the ambient charge in the air is making their hair stand on end. But they see a pillar of darkness extending from the ground to the sky, which we have to sort of assume is a combination of grue and regular smoke. But yeah, they've got these tinker-like bikes. Says somewhere between a scooter and a motorcycle in design. And they have like stuff to fake sound like their normal bikes. That's kind of cool. And then they start like trying to get armband information now that they're on the surface again. And they've become completely separated from the Undersiders. Taylor's riding on the back of Wanton's bike, or sorry, Tecton's bike. No, it is Wanton's bike. On the back of Wanton's bike to sort of preserve her pack, because the more electromagnetic stuff is in the air, the faster it like degrades. They find it says a cluster of dead capes. And it doesn't even say how many, it just says a number had died. But they see like a first checkpoint thing that they pass by. That's a number had died. And then she's questioning her decision to go to the Cold Cape Undercity, having wasted that time. Then they find another defensive line. She says, no trace now. So they don't even know it was used here. The last perimeter line had like a giant robot, and then has as many dead people as the first 2 points put together. And then they see Behemoth, and then Behemoth is, being attacked by all sorts. He's in Citrine's radius, I think, because it says the ground beneath, not radius, but range. It says the ground beneath Behemoth was tinted gold, vaguely reflective, and the geometric shapes were floating in the air, exploding violently when it came in contact with them. I'm pretty sure that, like, Citrine is actively, like, using her power on the battle. Anyway, Behemoth is not faking injuries like Leviathan did against Armsmaster. He's still just moving at normal tilt. And he fights his way out of Gru's darkness. Taylor asks for status update on the general leadership stuff, and she gets that Chevalier out of action. Rhyme is the commanding cape for field capes. Legend out of commission. And then their general goal right now is to assist the defensive line and to fall back when the call is given. We get the info that the earliest possible Scion intervention is 22.8 minutes, which, like, that's not going to happen. It's going to take a while. The estimated Scion intervention is 65 minutes, plus or minus 18 minutes. Tattletale is asked about. She's out of commission. They find, when they ask for the status of the Undersiders, Parian and Gru are injured. It says here, Citrine's effect seemed to be maximizing the effects of Alexandria's attacks because Behemoth wasn't able to channel them into the ground. So that was her. Flechette's been shooting him in the face, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. They really need Tattletale guiding Flechette where to shoot. where to fleshoot. And it calls her Flechette here because Taylor forget. Her name is Foil now. Let's see here. The Youngbon are still fighting, but it says here, and yet he advanced, inevitable. He switches tactics and takes him off guard by using flame again, and the force fields and walls of stone are sort of not able to withstand the way he moves the flames about. Golem is immediately, their group immediately starts working on this, but Golem's like bringing up hands over and over again, like as soon as possible, blocking people. Tecton starts making an antlion pit, like they're fighting fucking Echidna or something. And Annex is like providing cover around them. Apparently Wanton is moving the debris out of their way. They're all doing things. And apparently like the main thing keeping Behemoth in place right now is the guy firing like an endless barrage of airborne polygons that explode and slow time as he hits into, or as the power hits into Behemoth. Eidolon is basically also, like, he's changed his powers to be like a martial build, like Alexandria, just flying and punching Behemoth and stuff. And also using a slowing bubble. And apparently there's like cumulative slowing between Eidolon's thing and the Polygon Master. Who we never really learn more about, but it sounds cool. I like this question. It's what did it really do if you tried to walk forward and the upper half of your leg moved faster in time than the bottom half? How much strain did that create? Was there a point where the leg would simply sever? And it doesn't happen because they're beefed out crystal boys, but it's still cool to think about. He's still doing all his things. He's moving forward. He's shooting a bunch of lightning. Suddenly, after a big burst of lightning, the polygons they all disappear. I wonder what happened there. And then after that, Behemoth is able to move forward, and when Alexandria punches him in the back, he can't like push it out into the ground, but he still knocks back all the flying capes, so he's still got tricks up his sleeve. Behemoth breaks into a run, and he's just like idly fighting things as he passes it. It says he ignored capes and struck out across the area behind them, hitting a building with 2 massive guns on it, a clearing, a rooftop with what looked like a Tesla coil. So he's just like hitting everything as he goes, like bash, bash, bash. And then we don't have the organization. Our command structure is down. Tattletale is gone, either dead or too hurt to fight. Apparently he blasts one area with lightning, which sets off a bunch of explosives that were there, which, ooh, boy. And one of the force field generators explodes as well. He's begun charging toward their backline, where they have a bunch of like thinkers and stuff on a roof observing the battle. I mean, medium term, clearly our next goal is to save the capes on that roof. But Everything's falling apart. We know how Taylor feels about fighting battles from rooftops that you can't easily get off of. And Taylor sort of despairs here. She thinks the answer I'd declined to share with the other wards was a simple one. She had the ability to see the road to victory. Maybe when it came to the Endbringers, there was nothing for her to see. Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, that's the chapter. But I think it's another good one. I skipped more stuff than I would normally skip. However, that has mostly to do with the fact that there's really, like, dense, detailed fight blow-by-blows. And I think it's all really well written. And when you're reading it, I think it's pretty clear. I don't know. I think that this chapter is very clear as far as super fights go. So yeah, it's a good one. Taylor is becoming more enmeshed in the Chicago Wards group and even sticks with them while leaving the Undersiders. Seeing a team of, like, reasonably competent capes fight Contessa is pretty cool. Especially when her goal is to leave them all alive. But yeah, she keeps winning. She doesn't stop winning. I think I'm going to move into the characters section. The evacuees get almost no time in the spotlight. Last chapter, like, we see more, like, the girl who was injured, etc. This time, we get, like, one interaction where Taylor saves the guy from the edge of the sled, and then we get, once he's eased back down, he said something that I couldn't understand. His words breathless. So that's the most we get out of them. But obviously Taylor is trying to defend these people and sort of realizes the error of what she's done after the fact. Like, if she had known these guys were going to get taken away by Contessa, she wouldn't have brought them down there. If she'd have known that she couldn't have done anything about that, she wouldn't have gone down there. So, she has some regrets about the evacuees within this. But I do think all told that the people in that complex and the people Taylor evacuated, probably pretty safe. And then the cold capes, we don't get much out of them. We only really see one of them. It seems as though he thinks that he's already burned. Like, by having revealed himself for one moment to Taylor that he's already, like, screwed. I don't think that that's necessarily true. But, he leads his people into a new world that is not, city being destroyed by an obsidian monster that shoots radiation. So it's probably better to not be all that radiation shooting as a civilian. I know I'd go through the doorway. I put Rachel ? She's barely in this chapter. The dogs are there. She leaves with Gru. That's all we get. Aisha and Alec, they both get some shots in. We get some funny Aisha and Alec lines. They're being extra unhelpful. And Tecton tries to give them an excuse, and Gru's not having it. But moving on to Gru himself, Brian. He He accepts the group split, and in the like half hour that Taylor's gone, he's fighting up until some point shortly before we see Taylor rejoin the fight, and Brian has been injured. So we don't know what's going on, but they didn't say he's dead. So we can be reasonably sure, maybe, that Brian and Perion are not dead. Maybe. I put Wanton, Golem, Grace, Cuff, Annex. Wanton gets another, Regent Light line. We learn a bit about how Golem seems to be, he's got good cape instincts despite being a newbie. Taylor wonders about that. Grace continues to Grace alternates, and not in an unrealistic way, but Grace alternates between, being the Aisha of this group, the real, she's got, she's down in the dirt as far as the, inter-team banter goes, but, she's also kind of, a real company person. She's very, in favor of the PRT, as we saw in the previous chapters. So when things are kind of going wrong, I think that she defaults to, what would the PRT want us to do? And let me see. In this... Yeah, she's asking some of the questions to Contessa. She's not a super active participant, but they have 6 characters other than Taylor in this conversation. So yeah, it's Taylor, 6 wards, and Contessa all talking. So they distribute some lines, and by they I mean Wildbow. He distributes some lines to everybody. Cuff and Annex don't really do much. They help with the fight, but they're just sort of pieces on the board in that way. Tecton gets some decent characterization. He's talking almost as much as Taylor in the Contessa conversation, trying to get answers, trying to force things forward. He shouts after her when the door is closing. He doesn't have the sense to not push it until Taylor shoves his arm on the non-natural caves thing, but that's fine. It's good enough. And then let's see here. Contessa herself, I think this was great characterization. I love the way she talks through the conversations. I love the casual nature of everything. The fact that her goal was probably to send them back into the fight, inflicting the least damage possible, something like that. And she really did very little to damage the Taylor and the Wards. My new band, Taylor and the Wards. So, she's at least not being cutthroat. These capes are valued resources. And then Taylor's just normal Taylor in here. She's in a little bit of a weird head state when Contessa shows up, but she's overall just Taylor and normal. I don't think there's anything especially notable. She's a little bit despairing near the end of the chapter, but only to a degree that's reasonable. I don't think that she's over dramatic about any of these bits or anything, because the situation's pretty bad. Yeah. Moving on to powers, knowledge, and world building. This chapter has some great background fighting, great use of Citrine and Gru's powers, watching the way that the Triumvirate interacts with Behemoth, seeing Behemoth switch up his tactics as he has been doing, but to new things that we hadn't seen yet. It's a lot of fun. the environment of the fight, the like smoke and ozone and stuff, it feels so like well put together. It feels like it's actually I don't know. This fight and the Behemoth or the Leviathan fight in Arc 8 and then in Arc 17 the like Seamer snow scene are also like evocative. They're all such desperate situations, and the whole environment, everything around them is determined by what's happening. It's not like they're not just like running through a slightly destroyed city. It's like everything, the smoke and the fire and everything. And it's always in their face. So, good world building there. We get to see the cool powers like time slowing polygons, and we get to see that, sometimes Eidolon just likes to zoom up and punch people, and, we get all sorts. Also, we learned that Legend has been taken out of the action, which he probably got directly struck by one of Behemoth's claws or something, or maybe like a lightning strike, but it takes a lot to take Legend out of any fight. If only they had some sort of Amy here who could heal Legend just a bit and have him one of the major powerhouses back in. I wonder what Amy's spending her time doing right now. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I will talk more about the other powers, knowledge, and world building stuff as we continue to see the fight. It's fun that they pulled out some old stops like the Antlion Pit, and that Golem is like naturally ready to just stick hands between people and enemies constantly. So fun stuff. No bonus for this week, as most weeks that's the case. But the audience participation, 24.2. What were your initial thoughts on Alexandria showing up again in this fight? They touch on it last chapter, talk about it here, and then we'll sort of get more of the truth in a few chapters. Vic's answer was, I knew it had to be a farce, because why is she there? But then Taylor talks about how she fights just like the OG Alexandria and tries to confuse us more, ... Yeah, there's some stuff like that. However, there's a specific part that I thought, it's the part, was she being more cautious than she needed to be? It's like this whole entire paragraph about, how it seems like something's wrong. She's acting differently than she used to act. And Pretender is brought up in the chapter, like, oh, it's the woman who got Pretender. And then like Taylor asks, are they making their play? Is like bringing Alexandria here part of it? And so that is asked. And it's all sort of like the pieces are all together already. And it is funny that the comment on the previous 24.1, like people had already known day of. Just like, oh, that's Pretender controlling Alexandria's partially dead body. So yes, that very, very funny stuff to me. I, on my initial read, thought something was up, but I didn't think Alexandria was just back. And like I didn't know what to think, but I wasn't jumping to the conclusion that it was like, oh, everyone just comes back from the dead now. No consequences to any actions. So, but I do think that a lot of people were sort of reading that and got that impression. The impression, as Greg said earlier, that somehow Alexandria returned. But anyway, short audience participation section there. The question for this week for 24.3 is going to be, is there a moment in Parahumans that you find more bananas than he's pregnant with his dead teammates? So that'll be up to the audience to decide. Gonna play this old music and read us the outro stuff. So, the music in this episode was, again, crushed by ScarlettXOX. Greg says cheers for the stream. Cheers for being here, Greg. Thanks. The Discord server link can be found in the stream description as well as the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Yeah. Yeah. See you next week.